So I used to practice swordsmanship when I was younger, or sword fighting, right? Like it's the layman's terms, I guess. I used to do that for, I think, about 3 years. Not classically, but not in the formal sense to where I went to school or I went to a fencing school or whatever. It was literally just me in the backyard fighting with some sticks against some friends, and we ended up kind of teaching ourselves about pain, about discipline, about focus. It was a very weird experience, but that was just something that I had learned along the way about swinging sticks and eventually swinging like a steel sword, and kind of learning a little bit of discipline about just wielding a deadly weapon, I guess, right? Like a fucking anime character, kind of. But I grew up somewhat poor. Well, that's not entirely accurate. I became poor, actually, but I grew up lower middle class. So that was all that we had as our imagination. Was we had to come up with some idea about, how to be like this great hero or something, or, just the wildest imaginations that we could come up with. And so that's what we did. We just swung swords at each other. There was an abandoned pool to where we would fight in this arena, and we would have our own swords that we picked from the woods or whatever. But the broader story of this is that I think everyone has the conception about Buddhism, and how people think that there is just nothing wrong with Buddhism. I think that's wrong, in fact. The problem with Buddhism is it always flows outward, it never flows inward. And by that, I mean that Buddhism is all about the experience of the outside, and to help the outside rather than the inside, the inner person, the person that is controlling, I guess, the narrative, so to speak. And I think that's where Confucianism kind of gets it more correct, in the sense, in the fact that Confucianism actually acknowledges the self more than Buddhism does, at least from my small rudimentary understanding of both uh, ideologies, so to speak. Now, with that said, so there's this great kind of Buddhist book called The Book of Five Rings, which is more of like a fundamental samurai book, which has a chapter dedicated to the idea of nothingness. And this is something I took a bit to heart before when I was younger, because, it kind of means a clearing of the mind. And I had gone into the subject before about the way that I think about the world, or rather that how I operate about the world, and the fact that throughout most of my day, I don't think consciously. Like, I'm a very subconscious mind. For the most part, I just do not think consciously. And this is kind of the modus operandi that I've gone throughout my life, and I've just been so accustomed to it, throughout my time, I guess. But this simply means, at least the emptiness or the void, as the Book of Five Rings call it. I think this simply means that because you cannot know nothingness, you must try to know everything and nothing, right? And this kind of gets confusing, but it essentially means that the smattering of life and the fundamental meaning of existence is essentially what you're trying to go for. And I think this is very accurate, because oftentimes you can't be this void of nothingness. You cannot be this subconscious mind the entire time, right? I can't even be this subconscious mind the entire time. And so you must have to try and experience the entirety of life as it is, throughout the expanse of experiences, right? Promise I'm going to tie this back into esports. So that's why I say I think the way of the samurai is seppuku, right? Seppuku meaning suicide, right, in Japanese. Someone gets too caught up in their own mastery that they forget that other things can help them achieve that particular mastery. And you're so caught up in this entire cog of exactly how you can improve within this particular thing that you're only caught within that small cosmos or that small universe. League of Legends players, for instance, that only play League of Legends, they only get caught up within that world, that they can only think of, different item builds or how different champions interact and everything like that. But they don't realize that they can actually maybe learn a little bit more and expand their idea or their thought process through playing different games or interacting with different people, or even, just doing different activities throughout their life. I mean, I think Bjergsen is one of the people that first thought of this throughout his time being as a professional player. There was this video he did where he discussed the idea that he was so obsessed with practice that he would cut out personal time with hanging out with other different people as such, to where it would cut into his ability to learn, so to speak, and it would necessarily, I guess, inhibit his ability to expand his mind in terms of how to be a better professional League of Legends player. And that expanse in and of itself, although it seems as though it detracts from the way that you would be a professional player, because you aren't focusing on the macro or the micro or to practice different champion or play solo queue or whatever the fuck. In the grand scheme of things, it actually limits you if you are too focused on that. And there is such a thing of being too focused upon, this, like I said, this inner cosmos of whatever that you're wrapped in terms of what you're trying to master. Now, Faker is another instance of a player that has expanded throughout, or rather past the idea of League of Legends itself. He reads a lot of different books. Why does he read so many books? It's because it allows him to go through to kind of a different world, I guess, and to expand his mind. And he can bring those ideas back into League of Legends, right? He can always refer those things back into the League of Legends ecosphere and to apply that different knowledge. And you may not even think that certain things may not apply to League of Legends, but in fact, if your brain is so used to wiring everything towards League of Legends as such, you'll be able to find a way to use that knowledge from somewhere else and to apply it to whatever it is that is your expertise. So, as I've said before often, to fully understand something, I think oftentimes many find it fulfilling to maybe teach someone else. And with that said, if you are able to be taught through a different type of medium or through a different type of experience, I think that is the same type of, I guess, type of learning or type of, I guess, experience, or rather positivity that you can gain from that, and then to combine that into, I guess, your own idea of how to morph the world or morph your profession as such. So I don't think you can't approach mastery through one specific angle, because that in and of itself limits mastery, because true mastery isn't about fundamentals. Yes, everyone says that to be a master, you have to master the fundamentals, but to be a true master, I think you need to go past that. Mastery is innovation. Mastery is something that goes outside the box to where people haven't actually thought of how to do the things that you are doing because their thought process is so limited. So Miyamoto Musashi, the author of the Book of Five Rings, he's not considered legendary because he's mastered the fundamentals. Like, he innovated the dual sword style, right? To where he defeated a whole bunch of different opponents because he was able to pick up two different swords. Jet Li. Jet Li isn't considered legendary because he mastered the fundamentals. He increased the raw speed of martial arts itself, right? He's one of the fastest martial artists to ever exist, right? Because he understands both the fundamentals, but he knows how to speed it all up. Donnie Yen is another great martial artist, and that he's not considered legendary because he focused on the pure. He's a weapons master with, like different unique staff combinations. I would say like he's like one of the best people with a staff, I would say. Now, the entire idea of the way of the samurai itself, I don't think it's not through tradition. I don't think that's the ultimate way of the way of the samurai. I think it's through killing oneself, and through that rebirth, one can truly discover a new good path. I think that's actually the way of the samurai. The way of the samurai is actually oddly through seppuku. It's through redefining yourself. It's through finding different pathways and different ways to master oneself through different experiences and whatnot. I think that in and of itself is actually, hagakure as they call it, and it's that idea. It's not that you can ever master the void, so to speak, as Miyamoto Musashi had termed it, because no one is able to master the void, as at least I would think. It's that since you can't master the void, then you must master all different things, and you're always going to be in pursuit of mastering all those different things, which is, I think, the internal, or rather the eternal human struggle. But that's just something that you have to deal with. But as relating to all of esports itself, is that I think a lot of esports players can learn a lot from just trying to learn through different experiences outside of esports itself. And through that, I think that they will end up leveling up their game, just as Faker has leveled up his game, or just as a great player like Bjergsen has leveled up his game itself. And so I think this is an area that is highly unexplored, and something that a lot of players don't really focus on. And I think that's one of the next levels to, I guess, expand the mind of a professional esports player, and to like kind of unlock them to become, as it is, I guess, the next echelon of what a great player is meant to be.